Hey everyone, thought I'd do a little layout tour. A few people have been asking, so I figured the easiest way to do it is we'll follow a train down from staging to Chetwynd. So the layout is roughly 26 by 36 feet, or room size at least. I'm modeling Northern British Columbia, BC Rail, fall 1989. Basically, I'm modeling the line from Tacheeda to Chetwynd with the Dawson Creek and McKenzie subdivisions as well. So here we'll start with our southbound. Right now we're leaving the staging yard at Tacheeda. It's a 4-track reverse loop. Typical train length is usually around 20 to 30 cars. In this case, because it is a northbound, all the power's on the head end. Typically they run empties north, load south. So we'll follow this train around and I'll kind of try to explain some elements of the layout, parts of it. So I'll pan over as we leave here. This top portion of the layout is about 72 or 73 inches off the floor. Layout's a multi-deck, so it necessitates the high bench work, which was a compromise, but one I'm willing to live with to get what I need in. This section here, main line, eventually will have catenary in it, as it was electrified from Tacheeda to Wakely, at least on the prototype, and onto the Tumbler sub. I don't plan on running any coal trains, but I have the equipment to stage something if I want to or need to in the future. Bench work here is pretty narrow, looking at, I don't know, maybe a foot roughly. Just I'm not big on big open scenic vistas, so I decided to simplify it more for operations rather than, like I said, tons and tons of scenery. So now we're coming up to basically the center blob or peninsula where a lot of the curves and the levels do turnbacks. So this top portion here is a portion of the Chetwynd sub. The deck below it, which we'll get to later, is the McKenzie sub. Just another branch that the prototype had that it really wanted to model because they have a pulp mill and a few industries around. Let's pan around here. Sorry, I'm not exactly built for video, but hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. And the lighting's horrible, so we'll pan over. So yeah, we'll come down here, wait for the train. Like I said, nothing really special here to look at or view. Right up top here, gonna have the junction with the Tumbler sub, which is just basically gonna go off in the background into the trees. Like I said, I'm not really planning on running a lot of coal trains, but I kind of wanted to have that scenic element with, you know, trains under wire. Was somewhat unique to BC Rail. In this part of Canada, you don't see too many electrified railways in North America, so why not do it? Coming along here, yeah, so right here is right where the stub of the Tumbler sub will be. Basically just going to be a staging track. I'll probably hide it some way, somehow, not really too sure yet, but we'll figure it out. It looks like the ditch lights are flashing on the unit, but they are not. It's just this frame rate on this iPhone. Sorry about that. Now we're coming into one of the scenic parts of the layout. There's a curve at the railway location of Kennedy where there's a large passing siding. So I've been working on this. I've still got to put the switch stand in. Coming up to the south switch, Kennedy. Planting a bunch of trees in here, trying to make it look like northern British Columbia. Not really a big scenery guy, so yeah, I do the best I can, but I'm learning. We're getting there. I decided to go with a simple backdrop, which I learned from a guy, does a Mariah's Pass layout, and I believe his name is Josh. Sorry Josh, I forgot your full name, your full channel. I'm really bad at social media, so apologize, but yeah, he has a really good method of painting backdrops in a simple fashion. And we're coming along. Scenic view block. Because it's fall, we've got some fall color. Still trying to figure that out. So we're getting there. Line on the left bottom portion is the McKenzie sub once again. It's kind of cantilevered off the benchwork on the Chetwynd sub to fit everything in the room. Again, not really scenic, but for operation wise, it's working so far. I'm happy with it. Gives you something to do on a branch line, not just the main line. A little bit more than just running around in circles. And we're coming along here too. So here we have the junction switch. The unit's just passing over to the McKenzie sub, which will take off in the background here. And then the north switch, Kennedy. And after this part, kind of trains will disappear intentionally. Going off into the trees, and we go down into a helix. Now, I'm not a big fan of helixes, but they're needed. So yeah, the train will traverse through here, eventually dropping down, not to that deck right below. That's the McKenzie sub. We'll get to that later, like I said. But they'll actually drop. Oh yeah, sorry, I'm bad. That's McKenzie sub. Sorry, don't even know my own layout. Fair enough. We'll drop down to here. So pull back, so you can see the train going on there. And yeah, so we'll just pause and get back to when the train comes down. Okay, after a minute or so, we're exiting the helix. Again, helixes are kind of boring. I didn't want to film the whole thing because nobody really wants that. And then we'll come around the bend here and come up to the second siding on the layout, on the Chetwynd sub with Garbit. And yeah, north siding switch Garbit, obviously. Train's coming downhill, so it's in DB. And oh yeah, got derailment. Come out of dynamic for a little bit. It's the beauty of loc sound. It's easy to control a lot of these sound functions. All 4 units are ESU loc sound equipped. Shameless plug. So Garbit it's a decent sized siding. It's shorter than Kennedy. Guessing maybe 20 cars ish. Usually it's one of those things that's too short for most road freights, but can be used if needed. Again, no scenery here yet, nothing really special, but eventually I'm planning on kind of starting this section at some point. And yeah, we've got the whole train wrapped on the back. We're coming down to the south siding switch where the grade starts to drop again. Basically, most of the trains will spend a good portion of the room climbing or descending down to the main yard at Chetwynd. You try to use most of the room for elevation changes, so it's all visible track versus hidden. So coming down here, the grade will descend to Pinesul, so we'll go around the other room, corner of the room, and catch up with the train. On the other side of the room, we've got the siding of Pinesul, side of a sulfur loading terminal in the prototype, which I'll plan to build. It'll probably kick out here by the pencil. Basically, they would run a local out of Chetwynd to swap empties and loads, run back, and then the road freights would take the traffic south to eventually to Vancouver for export. We've got a train coming down grade again. Passing the load out. So there's a short passing track here, really only good for the local, and then the back track where the sulfur loading is. So I try to stay within the prototype as far as modeling, but there's always limitations, so I kind of almost refer to the layout as a proto freelance. Just there's certain areas I can't fit in or make compromises, or you know how it goes. Try to keep it as true to the prototype, but not 100% following it. So we got a large curve here. This is part of that peninsula. Again, trains are still descending slowly. Not too sure what I'm going to do for scenery here. Probably just trees and hills. Coming down here, which will be just a little bit of surgery, is the bridge over the Pine River at Pinesul. I'll probably end up using a Walther's product. There's one they make that's close enough for me. Don't really feel like kit bashing an entire bridge or scratch building one. So again, try to capture some of the elements of the prototype, but within limitations of the scale. So yeah, that's one of the many future projects. Like I said, the scene here is pretty shallow. It'll be challenging, I think, to make the scenery convincing, but I kind of like to be challenged once in a while. So I came back here a little bit just to show kind of an overview of this side of the layout. Excuse the mess. Scenery is in progress. There's another curve here. So the track in the background here, that's the portion we just came up. Eventually, kind of hope I'll basically put like a hillside here, be a view block, so you won't even see that track, or for the most part, just to separate the two scenes. So yeah, if you're looking here, the track in the background will be mostly hidden once this area is scenic. I hope. We'll see. So now we're coming down here on the last portion of the main line, which is prototype location of Doki, just outside of Chetwynd. So again, really shallow, kind of narrow shelf scene, but this area, the prototype, was essentially a tunnel of trees. Nothing really too scenic around there, so I figure why not make it easy on myself. Just have a narrow scenic scene, single track, nice and simple, no issue. As far as equipment goes, I try to keep everything prototypical when it comes to locomotives and freight cars for that era. I've got a rule that I did years ago of any car that before it gets on the layout, it has to be weathered, which I've kept to for the most part. There's still a few straggler cars that kind of ended up here, but yeah, I find it kind of keeps yourself disciplined. Takes a while to add cars, but once they're on the layout, they're there, they stay, they run. I don't have to pull them off later for weathering, or never get to pulling them off for weathering, so it's kind of one of those, I guess, a mantra that I've followed. So far seems to be working, but it also tests patience a lot too. So yeah, I think we got lucky on this train where everything's weathered, well, except for the caboose. We'll just ignore that. Maybe one day I'll get that done. I just needed it on the layout now. So we'll come follow the train back, and it's going into the last section of helix, which is, we'll pan back, so get this big blob here in the room. We got the Canfor mill, my kids' Legos. So this is part of Chetwynd down here. Prototype crossing sign from that location, thereabouts. So yeah, the train will drop down about a 2-turn helix, and then end up down into Chetwynd. So we'll just wait on this one, I guess, because it shouldn't be too long. Tail end will go through. So yeah, right here, the Canfor mill, might as well talk about this. This is the side of one of the major traffic generators, so chip loading and lumber products. And there's the head end. Right on time. So basically, this traffic on this train will be all the cars, empties, mostly destined for Chetwynd and Dawson Creek and Fort St. John and points north. Everything north of Chetwynd is just represented in hidden staging that I run between sessions. So trains will terminate here. Yard crews will build build trains for the Dawson Creek turn and a Fort St. John turn, which is effectively Septimus. And then they'll also build the daily southbound train, which will be mostly loads, and it'll have local control helpers, remote helpers, like the prototype did. Chetwynd's pretty, I kept it fairly close to the prototype as much as I could. Diesel servicing is here, rip track, cab track's over there. It's a small yard, pretty compact, so a lot of times we'll have to double over to fit, which is, makes things interesting. Yeah, so I drew up a basic schematic of the yard for everything. And then a few op session kind of ideas. Right now there's not too much traffic in here. Just a bunch of scenery and things like that. And we'll pull our freight down here, and then I'll cover the Dawson Creek sub. So we'll leave our train sitting here, and we'll just follow along, cover this section. This end of Chetwynd. So the line that goes off in the background drops down quite a good grade into staging at Septimus, which will be for Fort St. John, points north. So traffic will go to and from there. Track in the foreground is the Dawson Creek sub, which is one of the oldest parts of the layout. Sorry, excuse the mess. And it's hard to see back here, but eventually this monster will be the bridge over the Pine River. Kind of want to do scenery down to the floor. We'll see how that goes. Probably be a decade or two before I get there. Track will curve around. The only interesting thing about the prototype, I guess one of the many interesting facts, is it was all 4-axle power only, which I'm following. This build bridge here will be the wooden how truss bridge over the Kaskantinaw River. And then we'll come along with the Louisiana Pacific mill. The mill will basically be built from the backdrop here, so that hole there will be hidden by structure. Basically it was an OSB plant. And then we come into Dawson Creek, we've got a ramp track, yard. Dawson Creek's one of those kind of elements of the prototype that really made me want to model BCR. It's just a neat little branch line kind of piece of railroading. Got a train sitting here with the usual standard power of all Alco MLW products. We've got the depot over here, which will need to be rebuilt. And yeah, that's pretty much Dawson Creek in the lower section. And then right above it, now we'll cover the McKenzie branch, a little disjointed, but anyways. So over here, eventually will be all the Walther stuff. That'll be the site of a large pulp mill. We've got the industrial lead with some basic tracks. We've got Canfor here. We've got Fletcher, Challenge, the mill. We've got Finley, which shipped out bulk lumber. Canfor shipped out lumber and chips, which we have chips in the background, a bunch of all my junk. And we'll come along here. Sorry, we've got Finley, the lumber loading. Pretty significant grade that I had to put in just to get down to a comfortable level. Then we're coming into McKenzie yard. Got Esso on this side. Yard power sitting here. The railway had a dedicated switcher at McKenzie at the time of my modeling, so that's what I've done. Road power laying over. And the yard, stuff full of cars with a work train in the back. So this is one of those things, yeah, yard schematic for McKenzie. Basically, on this job, you come out of Tacheeda staging, sorry. You run to the junction switch at Kennedy, go on the McKenzie sub, come down here, yard the train, and then usually jump on the switcher and basically break the train down, build the outbound, switch all the customers. The only one unique thing with this job on my layout is, well, the lighting's horrible, but there's a proto throttle. I've been trying that out. It's been fun so far. More updates on that maybe in the future. And yeah, so through the unscenic and decided portion, McKenzie comes all the way around. It's a pretty long run, which is nice. It goes all the way mid-deck and then back into the scenery for now. Still trying to figure out what to do for trees here, trying to put a bunch in the background there to separate that blackness. It's still poking around, just a lot of grass down here. And yeah, it runs all the way down here, all the way through into the helix, and then up back into Chetwynd, the Chetwynd sub, sorry. So yeah, so that's a brief little tour of the layout. I know some people have been asking. Shane finally got around to it. And yeah, maybe in the future I'll do updates. No promises, but we'll see. Thanks a lot.